Hello and welcome to One Day to Love. I'm Tanya Walker. My guest today is someone that I consider a quiet legend in sports broadcasting. I say quiet because every time I mention all the different things that he's done and how proud I am that he's done them, he always says, "It's not just me, it's me and my team." I met him when I first got to One Life to Live. He was having a dinner party in Connecticut and invited me. So I went and I met Kathy Lee Gifford and Ron and Isabel Konecki. And when I stepped off the train in Connecticut, I fell in love with Connecticut and ended up making my home there. So when I got to his house, I found out he had, at that time, 23 Emmy Awards, and that he was a very important part of ABC Sports. But as the years have gone on and our friendship has grown, I've just always been impressed with his talent, his creativity, and he never stops. He's got great energy. And every time I think he's going to retire, he doesn't. He does something else huge. We're going to talk about the NFL Network, the America's Cup, the World Cup, all the Olympics, the World Series, so many things you wouldn't believe he's done. But when I found out about this movie called September 5, I was watching it on television. And all of a sudden, I saw someone playing my friend, Geoff Mason. He didn't tell me that he'd gone through this. This is a tragic story and an unbelievable story about the hostages in 1972 that were taken, that were Israeli athletes in the Olympics. And it's a heck of a story. And they made a movie about it. And Jeff's at the center of that. And I just can't wait for you to find out all about it. It's the first time anything like this had ever happened live on television, and 900 million people were watching. So don't miss this. We'll be right back. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Tanya. How you doing?
I'm fine. I am so happy that you're with me today. I wanted to have you on the show for a long time because you are a legend in sports broadcasting, especially at ABC, but everywhere, NBC, ESPN, all over the place. But then I found out about this film called September 5. I call it September 5th, but I read that people call it September 5. What is the way to actually pronounce it?
The title of the movie is September 5,
So I got it.
and it is about what happened in Munich during the Olympics on September 5th.
Yes, I understand. That was such a tragic, terrible. I remember 1972. I remember the Israeli hostages being, Israeli athletes being kidnapped and taken as hostages. But you were there to film the Olympics.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, this horrible thing happened. And I saw the movie. I loved it. And would you tell the people
Thanks.
what happened?
Well, what happened is we heard gunshots early. I was on the early shift. September 5th was going to be an off day for us. So most of the people had taken off for a mountain hike or whatever. I had the duty that day, and we were in the broadcast center early as usual, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we heard gunshots. And it turns out that the hostages who had been taken hostage were only 100 yards away from our broadcast center because we were located right next to the Olympic Village. So because we were there and because we had a skeleton crew ready to put ourselves on the air, we just decided, let's go with it. What's happening?
Well, you had
And
to. You had
yeah,
to.
we had to. We didn't have any choice. And everything that happened for the next 22 hours was just basically our reaction to everything we learned
Well, you can
as
imagine
it happened.
how I felt when I saw the movie and this was it John Magaro? Is that his name?
Yeah. John
Playing
McGarrow
like
played me.
yeah, and it's like he's playing you, and they're saying Jeff Mason, and then there's a um uh Peter Stargard. Is that how you say his last name?
Peter Sarsgaard. Yep.
Who
Uh-huh.
played Roone Arledge. I
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how he was given the whole thing to you because you had just started at ABC, right? At ABC
Well,
Sports.
I had been there 5 years, but I hadn't been one of the senior executives, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
I'd only been there 5 years. I'd worked a lot of Wide World of Sports,
sort of normal
normal sort of stuff.
things, you know.
But because Rune, our boss that day, was preoccupied with some heavy stuff, i.e., CBS News wanted us to throw it to them so that they could do the coverage of this event, he said no. And because of a number of other things that happened that day, we were about to lose the satellite because of a booking situation.
Yeah, I saw it. He just
Rune,
gave it to you.
Rune was down the hall busy with other things, and he just said, Mace, take it. Don't, keep up with it, and I'll be down when I can.
Well,
And so there we were.
I was surprised that all of a sudden there's this man playing my friend in the middle of the screen on my television, and I'm like, well, he doesn't look anything like him, but my God, what a responsibility.
When I first met Magaro, who I then learned was going to play me, I said, John, I'm looking forward to getting to know you. I have only one word of advice. Don't screw me up. And he didn't. He was terrific.
Well, I wanted to ask you if you spoke to him about your.
Spoke to him often. Once the casting had been done, they called me and said, okay, we now have finished the casting. They gave me the list. And I said, good. How soon can I talk to John Magaro,
Mhm.
who plays Jeff Mason? They said, we'll connect you tomorrow. And for the next year, he and I spoke often, either on Zoom or on just the telephone. He took the project very seriously, wanted to be as authentic, wanted to portray me as authentically as he possibly could.
Of course.
And he did a marvelous job doing so, and we got to know each other pretty well.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought so.
He did a really good job.
Yeah, he did. Everybody did. It was a great cast. When there were two hostages that were shot right away, like before anybody even knew anybody had been taken. There were two
Right.
hostages that were shot.
Right.
One was a coach and one was an umpire. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, and so they come to you and tell you that these two guys have been shot already. These two people have been shot already, been killed already. And that's when it seemed like you went into let's get this going mode really fast. And there was a point of time when you had your people pushing the pedestal camera
Up
out,
the hill.
out the door and up the hill. And it's like today we have these handheld things and you can just run out there and shoot something. But in this case, you have to take a camera that's so heavy, that's like 6 feet tall. And how was that?
It was hard to do, but we had a good skeleton technical crew that was there already under the skilled guidance of Julie Barnathan and Phil Levins and Joe Maltz. They were ready when I said, get a camera up on that berm right there. It's 50 yards away, because from that position, we are going to be able to see the front door of the apartment in the Olympic Village where the hostages are being taken.
And
now.
I remember the actual film of the guy with the
Yeah, it was stocking
terrorist.
cap.
Yes, I remember that.
Yep. So they horsed it up. I mean, it took 5 or 6 of them. It
I
was
can
not easy.
imagine. Yeah,
They horsed it up there, the hill, and there we were at 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever. We literally had the only shot
yeah,
of Building 31 in the world,
right.
which was really good for us to have. The next thing we got was the camera that we had placed up on top of the Olympic Tower, which was a beauty shot, basically, just to see Munich and the area. And it turns out that camera could see the roof of Building 31.
Right,
So we started using, so that gave us 2 camera coverage.
right. Did they have a TV on inside of where they were?
Well, that was a big issue. And thank you for asking. Because there was a cable system in the Olympic Village with lots and lots of stations, primarily carrying the channels of everybody in the world who was carrying the Olympics, there was a channel, I don't know what number it was, channel 36, let's say, that was on a list in every Olympic room, Olympic Village room,
Mhm.
which would have said channel 32, ABC Sports Beauty Camera. And if they indeed had it switched in the room, to that channel, they would be able to see what that camera was looking at.
Right.
And more often than not, that camera was looking at the sharpshooters crawling across the roof above the hostages, getting ready for what we thought was an attack to rescue the hostages.
Mhm.
And so when the police came bombing in the control room, guns drawn, pointed right at me, saying, "Camera out."
Unbelievable.
It was the first time I realized, oh yes, okay, they're right. We got to turn the camera off. So we were back to one camera.
Right, right. But that didn't happen until when?
That happened. I would say that happened around 10 o'clock that morning.
It was when they were thinking about maybe
Staging a rescue.
maybe moving them. It was like that was like
Yes.
somebody's going to
Well,
rescue.
they all along they had planned to move them and make a hostage exchange down the road. We were beginning to learn that. But we had not really thought about the fact that they were going to be able to see what was happening on their roof. So, the police were right. They came in and they said, turn it off, and we did.
Yeah, well, that's good. But the thing
Yeah.
that was so weird to me is that now we've got these hostages in the Middle East, and it's the same Palestinians. It's not the same group, but it's the Palestinian people, right? Hamas terrorists.
Yeah, it's
These terrorists were called Black September, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that was an opinion that was not opinion, it was a fact that was voiced first, I believe, by Peter Jennings, who was on our team, who at the time was a star of the ABC News. He had been from that part of the world, lived there many years, and so he was well versed on the whole Black September situation with Israel, etc. So, yeah, he was. We were well versed in how to interpret why this was happening.
But did you think about it ahead of time? Did anybody think about it ahead of time?
We always had, Tanya, and we still do to this day. There's always a point pre telecast, especially in a big event like the Olympics, where you rehearse and or practice what you will do in case of an emergency. Several years later, you might remember we were covering the pregame show for the World Series in San Francisco, and we had an earthquake.
Big
And
one.
I'm in
Big.
the truck, and yeah, Al Michaels said, shake, shake, shake. Cameras are moving. Oh my God, we're having an earthquake, and then it went
There
black.
went the bridge.
We had practiced what would we do if there was an earthquake. So we were to some degree in those days, and to this point in time, always pretty ready for whatever we were faced with.
Do you think that they covered it? Terrorism really hadn't been something that was happening often back then.
Right, right.
Now it's like anytime you get on an airplane, you're almost preparing for what's going to happen when somebody tries to run into take
Yeah,
the plane and kill the pilot,
yeah.
We're taking off our clothes, our shoes, our boots, everything. But for years and years and years, nobody thought about terrorism. So this was happening during a period of time where nobody was really thinking much about terrorism.
Well, you may remember in the movie, we couldn't figure out what to call
Right.
them. We gathered out in the hall and said, "Hey guys, hold it for a second. What do we call these people?
You're right. That was
Gorillas."
a great
And
line.
we
I was
agreed
like,
to call them
what are you going to
terrorists.
call them? The bad
Yeah,
guys?
exactly. So that's when we decided to call them terrorists.
Right, right,
This is what they were.
right. Well, then, many years later, we sort of got used to it, in
Yeah.
1993 when we had the attack on the tower, and then 2011, which was a horrible attack on the tower. I remember when there was domestic terrorism with Patty Hearst, um, and when Frank Sinatra's
Yep.
son got kidnapped. I mean,
Yep.
there's been stuff that's happened. It's been bad. But the problem in this case is that the whole world is watching. When they said 900 million people were watching this, and they wanted you guys to throw it to the news crew back in New York, not you.
Right.
And you are a news crew. You're a sports news crew. So you're still a news crew. So
Well, we were storytellers. We covered stories
exactly
about people
all
for
the
a
time.
living. for a
all the
living.
time. And they would try.
And so that's why Rune said, no, it's our story.
I was so excited about that because you have to remember, I didn't know you were in this movie. I didn't know this
That's
was you.
right.
I didn't know this was your
That's
story.
right.
You never mentioned it.
Yeah.
So I'm watching this and I'm going, well, look, they're not going to give it to the news people, are they? I'm like talking to the TV. And then he's like, no, we're not going to do that. That's good.
That meant a lot to us, Tanya, because it was early in the morning and we were just sort of getting ready for the day. And all this is happening and we're trying to react moment by moment. And when Rune came in and I said, Rune, we're getting a request from New York. They want us to throw it back to them. Rune said, not going to happen. Take care of it. And he walked out of the control room. Well,
right.
that to us was all we needed to understand the support we had from our boss. And he was the one we were working for. So
That's right.
that was a brilliant moment in terms of his ability to understand we were ready, we needed it, we wanted it, and we could do it. That we were able to be successful that day. That was a really key moment.
I can't even imagine anybody else doing it. I mean, if you think about it, if they'd given it to the people in New York, the people in New York aren't there.
We were 100 yards away.
Right. So why in the
So,
world would they give it to the people in New York?
well, because they were news and we were sports.
But how would they get there wasn't any way to get
Who knows?
you
Who
know,
knows?
you were the boots on the ground, you
We
know?
were the boots on the ground, and we were the boots on the ground several years later when they had an earthquake. So,
Yeah.
and out in San Francisco, as an aside, the other group of boots on the ground in San Francisco, strangely enough, was ESPN. They
That
were new.
that
They
that
were covering the World Series pregame show, and Bob Lee and his people did brilliant coverage of what happened that day and the earthquake. So, I really am so lucky to have been part of this learning experience that our industry has given us the opportunity to cover and to document. So
and the
I'm
trust,
sorry I hadn't been involved with either one of the stories,
the
but
trust, the trust that they put
yeah,
in though was huge.
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
that was, I mean,
That's why we work hard. That's why
this,
we work hard.
this is a historical event that people are
Yep.
gonna know about and watch for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
And it's a story of a generation.
Yep.
We all hope it's a once and one time only horrible show at the Olympics.
Seems to happen all too often now.
Well, you look for it, but we weren't
Yep.
looking for it then. We just weren't looking.
No. No.
Those were the good old
We
days.
were not.
Yeah, we weren't looking for bad things to happen. And now it seems like you kind of are, you kind of try not
Well,
to.
you have to be ready.
Yeah.
We have to be ready. We have to be ready to tell the story.
Yeah. Well, you've been telling stories, and I want to talk to you about this for a long time.
Are you suggesting that I'm very old?
No, just very experienced.
Yes, I've been telling stories for a long time.
Yeah, you started at the America's Cup. You were a sailor in the America's Cup, and I remember when I went to Martinique and I took this excursion where they put me on a America's Cup sailboat, and they had me be a grinder. I think I was a grinder.
Yeah.
Is that thing that goes around like this?
Yeah.
It
Grinder.
reminds me of the first percussion instrument I used to play in a band in high school. And it was a tremendous amount of work, and there were 8 people, and we weren't going very fast. And when I think about what you were doing, how did you get into that?
Because I grew up in Marblehead sailing. And one of the challenges that year in the America's Cup was put together by a group from Marblehead. So what they did is they just handpicked all of those of us who had grown up in Marblehead. We were all in our teens or whatever, but we all knew each other. We all raced against each other every week. They just figured, well, what the heck? Let's just put together a Marblehead challenge, and we'll send you guys over. And why don't you win the America's Cup while you're at it? And so that's how it came together. And I did that summer. We didn't win. Weatherly won the America's Cup, or Weatherly won the challenge that year. But I became familiar enough with the sport and with the event so that when ESPN had an opportunity to cover live the America's Cup in Newport, I was the first one they called, along with Gary Jobson. And we were there.
What about the
That's
Australia? What's the Australia piece?
Well, the Australia piece is that they beat us for the America's Cup. They won the cup back. And so that's how those of us who were covering that event got to know our colleagues again who were covering the event for Australia.
Uh-huh.
A guy named David Hill, who we became very close to, who ultimately came back to the United States and started Fox Sports.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, he went to work for Fox, and so we were partners with our friends from Australia, and I was down there for the better part of a year, so it was quite an experience.
And then after that, you came back to ABC, or were you still with ABC? Was all of that?
That was no, that was ESPN. I'd left ABC by then, and let me look here. What year was that?
I don't remember.
Anyway,
90,
I came back from the America's Cup, and I ultimately
96.
went out. Yeah, I ultimately went out on our own,
94
on
was
my
the
own.
World Cup, but that was the soccer. So
That
you did the sailing, and then how did you
came
get,
back, and
you did
ESPN.
you did
ES,
all those Olympics though in between.
Yeah,
You,
I was sort of a big events guy. All right. I
yeah.
had the experience. I knew the people who were involved, not necessarily the athletes, but the people who were involved in the TV coverage. So whenever there was a big event that came up, World Cup, America's Cup, Olympics, whatever, I was one of the first people they called. And so for me to be able to ride that pony for all those years
Oh, it's just,
was a
and it's
really
so much
special treat.
fun, you know. No,
Yeah,
I'm the biggest sports fan there is. I love watching sports, and I just think that would have been so much fun to do, you know, all those Olympics and then the World Cup. And did you ever do the, you know, I love horse racing. You never
right.
did that, did you?
Yeah, I did the Kentucky Derby a number
You
of times.
did?
Oh yeah,
That's
sure.
not fair.
You are right. We were blessed to be in that business, but nothing in this world comes easy, which is really good. And it was really hard to cover all those
Of
events
course.
well, to cover them well.
Of course.
And so there was an enormous amount of stress involved, an enormous amount of traveling involved. Uh,
And
and that's another
preparation. You have to prepare for every
right.
event, every coverage,
Yeah.
every winner, every loser, every special interest story, everything that
Yeah.
could go wrong, everything that
And
could go.
because of all that travel and stress, I ultimately ended up with an alcohol problem, but I eventually got that solved. And so, yeah, those were brilliant days in our industry. And we were blessed to have an opportunity to cover all those major events,
Yeah, it's very
even
exciting.
though I ended up drinking too much vodka.
Oh
I
well,
don't drink anything anymore.
you and everybody else. Well, neither
That's
do I.
right.
Neither do I. So the thing that I love about the Olympics is all the places that you get to go and all the opening scenes that you get to do and all the people that carry the torch, um, the Olympic torch. And I remember I went to Ireland and I was only going for 4 days. And it's such a big deal, you know, to everybody in the world, I think. And when I got off the airplane, I had to wait for somebody in the bar area, and I'd flown all night and I was really tired. But they had the TV on and it was Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was lighting the,
Yeah, most famous athlete on the
yeah,
planet.
I couldn't believe it. And years later,
Yeah,
to meet him at the Kentucky Derby, it was a,
absolutely.
and I got to interview his daughter for a
And
life.
he lit the torch in Atlanta for the Olympics.
Yeah, it was
I
a,
mean, Muhammad Ali was a bigger than life character,
uh,
not only in the world of sport, but in the world of human relations. He was unbelievable.
yeah, he was. What about Howard Cosell? Did you ever work with him?
Howard Cosell, how do you describe Howard Cosell? He was bigger than life.
Yeah,
He had a photographic memory.
he did.
He had a passion for the story that carried him beyond normal storytelling, but he also had his own style.
That's for
Uh,
sure.
yeah, that's right. And so,
And so did.
he was quite someone to work with. I have to tell you, very demanding, very very demanding, and was all about excellence, all about himself. I mean, I'll never forget. I'll just say one quick story. He would walk into a room full of people after the show at a dinner or a cocktail party, and he would walk into the room and he would say, "Good evening, everybody.
I'm
I'm
here.
Howard Cos. I'm Howard Cosell, but you knew that, and I can't tell you how happy you are to see me here tonight. And he meant it. And he meant it. So
So he had a
that's who
great
he
sense of
was.
humor. He had a good sense of humor.
That's who he was.
Yeah.
Yep, he was quite extraordinary.
Are there any Olympics that stand out more to you than any other ones? Were you there for Mark Spitz?
Yeah. Well, Spitz was in Munich. We took Spitz 4 years later to Montreal. Um, so he worked for us, so I've gotten to know Mark Spitz, and we've
Oh,
kind of kept in
really? He
touch.
became a
Oh yeah,
commentator for ABC?
exactly. And we do even today in the wherever we are, 2025, we do a monthly Zoom call with those of us who used to cover the Olympics
You
for
do?
ABC.
How
Yeah, we do.
fun. How fun.
And Mark Spitz joins us every month. And
Oh,
so
that's
we've been able to keep in touch with him. He was quite he was quite a he was a big star. Okay, when he won all those medals,
oh, it was
he was a big
amazing.
star.
The whole
Yeah,
country was rooting for him. The
yeah,
whole country. I mean, can you imagine having the whole country rooting for you?
he was a big star. And he
Oh, yeah.
understood pressure and he knew how to deal with it. He
Yeah.
was amazing. He was amazing, and to this day, he's still just a really good guy. And he's very proud of his ability to transfer from being a swimmer to someone who goes on television and describes swimming in a meaningful way. He's quite the extraordinary human being.
Did you ever meet Nadia Comaneci's people?
We met with Nadia, yes, in '76. She's now married to a guy that used to work for us.
Really?
Yeah, I think they live in Montreal, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, not Nadia was, there's another one. I mean, Nadia, my God, just changed the sport
Yes,
forever.
she did. These are the people that
Yeah.
stand out to me the most. And I mean, my age is my age, so I remember a lot of the
Yeah.
Olympics.
Well, we were blessed. I mean, you're a lot younger than I am, but you and I have been around for the last bunch of years when most of the big events in the history of sport have transpired, comma, plus television has matured to show them. So
Exactly.
we've been really lucky to be around to work on and to enjoy the coverage of sporting
Yeah,
events.
yeah. I one of my favorite things out here is the BNP Paribas tennis tournament,
Yeah.
and these wonderful golf tournaments. I mean, they're just
Yep.
so
Yep.
much to watch, you know. And
Yeah.
I mean, I spend a lot of time watching sports. I do.
Well, I ran the Nabisco Dinosaur tournament out there when I lived in Palm Desert.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I went to work for Nabisco, and at that time, Nabisco was sponsoring Dinosaur's golf tournament.
Whose idea was it
And
to jump in the water? There's in case anybody doesn't know.
I think it was Amy. No, it was Dinah's idea.
Was it Dinah's idea?
Dinah in a bathrobe. I believe I have this right. It, when she was on
Dinah
the
in a
winning
bathroom.
team, I
Do not,
believe it
do
was
not.
Dinah that dove in the water.
Oh my gosh, what if
Yeah,
it's the LA, it's the women's professional, or is it
yeah,
professional?
that,
Yeah,
that
professional golf tournament. And
professional golf. Yeah,
whoever wins has to jump in this big like pool that they
lake. It's a
a
lake right
lake.
next to the
Yeah.
18th green. Yeah,
And it's a really big deal. They do it every year, and it's
every year.
and but they've moved it now. They've moved it.
I didn't even know that.
They moved it, yeah. Man, that
Huh.
stinks because I really, really love that thing.
Mission Hills was a perfect location
It
for it.
is, it is. They still have
Yep.
great things. Now they have the American Express. I
Yeah,
think
I think that's what it's called, the Amex.
yeah, and
I think.
the live thing may be there. I'm not sure what's gonna
Uh,
happen with that. What do you think's gonna happen with that? You
I don't
think
know.
that
I think they're ultimately going to have to come together
I
somehow.
I do too.
They will not be the first sport that ever got fractionalized and then merged for the greater good. They won't be the first ones that have ever done that. But I think it's ultimately, it's inevitable. They're going to have to. But what do I know?
No, a lot.
Not a lot. Not a lot about that. I don't touch that stuff
Yeah,
anymore.
but I do think
Yeah,
it can happen. I hope so,
it's too
because
bad.
I love watching all of them, and they don't all play together anymore, so I have to
Not
figure
anymore.
where
Yeah.
they playing, it's easy.
Yep.
Um, so I knew you did all these things when I met you. There's actually a online, if you look and you ask people online how many you've won, how many Emmys you've won, Some people say 23, some people say 24. I'm like, "Oh my god. How could this be up for grabs?"
I think the actual number is 25, I believe.
Oh my
But
god. Oh,
several years ago, I went through a whole thing with the National Television Academy
uh,
because
couldn't
I
remember.
didn't know how many I'd won. Because I gave some of them away, some of them are here in my office, etc.
I
And to
just
the
want one,
best,
Jeff. I just want one
well,
of my own.
hang in there,
Oh,
hang
okay.
in there. You never know.
I got
And
close.
we came up with the final list we came up with was 25. So I think that's the right number.
And are most of them for Olympics?
No, 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 no. I'll just read a quick list. Most of them are Wide World, Indianapolis, Monday Night Football, New York City Marathon, uh,
Wow.
America's Cup, Winter Olympics, downhill skiing in Austria,
Oh my
for
god.
all those shows that we did every week for so many
Yeah.
years.
So when you're traveling all over the place like that, what does that do to your personal life?
Well, I ultimately, as I mentioned before, I became dependent upon vodka. I was always stressed, always tired, always traveling, yada yada, and ended up, drinking too much. That's just I became an alcoholic. I can say one quick item in that regard. I won an Emmy for producing a series of telecasts at Wimbledon for NBC in the early 80s. To this day, I have no recollection of being in London for that show, and I was there 3 weeks.
And
I
you
was a blackout drinker.
wow.
And so who knows? God only knows how that works. Uh, I was blessed to have an opportunity to go get help for that. And I went to Betty Ford, and she and I got together and started working together. And I've been working with the Betty Ford people ever since, like 40 plus years.
Yeah, I'm aware. I'm aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They sold it to Hazelden, I think.
Yeah. They merged with Hazelden. That's correct. So they are now known as Hazelden Betty Ford. Yep.
Yeah, I think
And they're still doing good work every day.
I liked it better before. It's just me. I liked it when it was just
I'm
this thing. But
That's where I started, so
yeah, yeah.
I'm a little biased.
I know, me too. Me too. Me too. So I just know that when after I knew you'd done all this, and when you introduced me to Dennis Swanson, which you really helped me so many times.
President of ABC Sports. He was a good man. He wanted to see people get good opportunities.
Yeah, and you guys got me the singing opening the nighttime Emmys that 1994, which was a really big deal for me.
Yep.
Um, and but then, I got married in 97 and you moved and I moved and da da da. And then, I keep in touch with you and you're like, well, I'm 74 now. I'm like, oh, are you retiring? And you're like, yeah, but well, actually, I'm running all over the world to these different countries because I think we should bring soccer into America because America just doesn't really get soccer. So I'm going around and taking these camera crews and we're shooting these soccer matches and it's really going well.
Tanya, all I've ever wanted was to stay relevant.
You have stayed relevant.
And I
I
had an
want your
opportunity.
book. I want your book on how to stay relevant because I have a hard time with that out here.
Well, I'm
I
blessed to
had the
have been around.
pandemic. I had the pandemic, then the pandemic, then my whatchamajigger went on strike. My union went on strike for 6 months. So I haven't been able to work very much. That's why I'm doing this. There's really not that, I mean, it's
Well, I'm
terrible.
glad you're doing this, by the way.
Yes, thank you. But it's hard. It's difficult to not be able to make a living after you've made a living for so long. And
It's
then
a
I gave
challenge
up.
out there.
I gave up my career because I thought I would never have to work. And
You didn't give up your career. You're doing this.
I came back. I came back after Ed died, and I was married 20 years. But I've been gone a
Yeah.
long time. So then anyway, you told me you're doing this thing for the World Cup, and I'm like, okay. So I put that in the back of my head. Next thing I know, I'm watching TV at a bar, and they've got this World Cup on TV. And I'm like, that's my friend. And everybody's watching this. Everybody, you made it. And I said this to you the other day, and this is what I said in the introduction. You're a quiet hero of sports broadcasting because you're legendary, but you're quiet about it. And the other day when I said to you, you started the NFL Network and you started this fever in the United States regarding the World Cup, and you said, no, it's always me and a team. It's me and a team, me and a team. And I know that it's you and a team, but that humility is a beautiful quality in you. But
Thank you for that. I've had a difficult time recently because they have asked me, in conjunction with promoting this movie that I've been involved with, to go out and do interviews with Good Morning America, Today Show, etc. I have always been able to sort of push those to the people who are actually doing the work. You produce Monday Night Football. You go ahead and do the interview. I don't need to do that. A, because I'm shy, but B, because I'd rather see other people get the credit for having done the work. This was very hard for me, and I had to learn to accept that if I didn't do those interviews and get the attendant publicity, notoriety, then I would be missing an opportunity to help our story
that's right.
about Munich be told the right way.
That's right.
And so I said, okay, I'll do them. But boy, it's been hard for me. I'm just not used to doing this stuff.
I know you're not. I know you're not, but you had to do it for me because, I know where you live.
Well, you didn't ask. You called me up and said, here's when you will be doing this. What was I supposed to say?
Yes, ma'am. No, really, it was really sweet of you. But the thing that I'm getting at here is that you're a remarkable person. I mean, you just keep doing one huge thing after another huge thing after another huge thing. And then when you think you're going to be fading off into the sunset, you do another huge thing and then another huge thing. I mean, when did you think of this NFL Network? How did that come about?
Steve Bornstein called me the day I got back from Australia for doing the America's Cup in Sydney. I got off the plane. I'm in a hotel in LA. And he called me and he said, God, it took us forever to find you. Where the hell have you been? I said, I've been in Australia for 3 months
Other
doing
side
the
of the
America's
world.
Cup. He said, well, we're about to start an NFL network. Where are you? I said, I'm in Los Angeles. He said, well, don't leave. He said, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow. And you are the first person that I'm going to hire, and we're going to put together the NFL network. It wasn't like he wasn't asking. He was telling me what I was going to do next,
Yeah.
which was fine because coming back from a year or so in Australia, I didn't really have the next gig lined up. I just didn't.
Right.
So I've been very fortunate, very lucky.
Yeah. Well,
But people like Steve called me.
I'm glad. I'm glad about that.
Yeah. So that was quite an experience.
But the NFL Network, I didn't know how it was going to work. I didn't know if it was going to use present day games that are actually happening, or if it was going to be reruns of games that have happened before, or so it's got everything.
Well, when we started, none of those, we didn't have answers to any of those questions, but there was good money involved. The league was behind it. And so the more we expanded the partnership, the more we were able to do. And it has gotten to the point where I read something in the newspaper last week that there are conversations. I don't know whether this is true or not. I suspect it might be that ESPN is talking to the NFL about buying the NFL network.
Perfect.
Go figure.
Yeah.
But why not?
Yeah, I'm not
Why
surprised.
not?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. So when did you decide to do this film? How did this film come about?
I was called by a friend of mine named I've just drawn a blank. I'm Jimmy. Jesus Christ, I can't.
So,
Pardon my French.
so
Um, I'll think of it. Who I'd known for many years, who told me that he was aware of a project that was taking place in Munich, um, that was going to tell the story of the Munich hostage crisis, but from a different perspective. They wanted to tell this. Jimmy Scheffler was his name, and I knew his dad, and I had worked with Jimmy, and Jimmy was on our staff at Munich. And he said that he had some people that were putting together a project. He knew some people to tell the story from a kind of a different perspective, i.e., how that story was covered, because the story itself had been shown a number of times on movies, etc. So he said, "Are you available?" And I just happened to be available, and I said, "Yeah." Um, have him call me or whatever, and he did. And I said, "Well, it sounds interesting. Can you do you have a script?" And they said, "Yes, we are on version 2 of the script. We'll send it to you and let us know what you think." Well, I read it the next day. They emailed it to me, and I have to say I was quite taken by it. It transported me back
I bet.
into that day. So I thought, well, these guys are onto something. I never would have thought telling the story from the perspective of ABC that day, 100 yards away, but they wanted to do it. And I liked the way they were framing their passion for it. So I said, let's make a deal. And we did. And I spent the next year and a half helping them put together. I think we ultimately ended up on version 13 or 14 of the script,
It's pretty neat.
how that story should be told.
And it
And
was very
because
important. It was, I'm sorry, go
that's
on.
right.
It was very
Well,
important.
I'm the only one of that senior staff at the Olympics that day who is still with us, still alive. So more often, most of their research was done by talking to me and me sending them connections with other people who were there that day, photographs, videotape rights to the Olympics, etc. So I really got involved as a co-producer, and they did a heck of a job. They told the story beautifully.
Whose idea was it to bring in the actual footage from the actual event, including Jim McKay?
We all discussed that and decided that was the only way to do it. We had issues getting the rights
I'm sure.
to that footage. It's always difficult. Um, So we had people. Bob Iger at Disney was an ABC alum who provided some good motivation for us, and we were just blessed to have a bunch of people who understood the importance of the project and the fact that we were ready to do it well.
Mhm.
And so we were lucky to have that opportunity, and everybody involved did a terrific job.
It gives it such a presence. It gives it
Yeah.
such it makes it so real and so important. And those of us who saw it, it takes you right back. So it feels,
Well, it was difficult. There was a time when it looked like the rights were going to be hard to get. And
yeah,
I remember saying on our Zoom call, whatever week that was, guys, we can't cast Jim McKay. I'm
yeah.
sorry. It doesn't look like we're going to get the rights. I've done everything I can, yada, yada, yada. And they said, well, who should we cast to play Jim McKay? I said,
No one.
the answer is no one.
No one.
And one thing led to another. And so
I just
many,
thought
many phone calls later, it worked out fine.
that was brilliant because anybody else would. It was weird to see Peter Jennings
Yeah.
cast
Yeah,
cast as
he was part of
somebody.
the team, no question. Yep.
Um, th- this is just a little aside because of
Yeah.
he didn't seem very nice in the movie.
Who?
Peter Jennings.
Oh,
Was
Peter Jennings
was he
was
pissed
very
off?
vocal. He was very vocal that day about his opinion that news people should be covering the event.
That's what
It
I
was a
got.
news event.
That's what I got from
And
him.
he
I'm like,
he
he's
came
not
in the
being very
control room
nice.
and said to me and Roon, folks, you got to give this over to ABC News.
Yeah, you don't know
I'm
what
glad
they're
to be with you. I'm
doing.
glad to be with you, yada yada. And Arliss looked at him and said, Peter, in this particular case, you're wrong, but thanks for the suggestion. And so it was,
Like,
he was not happy about that.
I got that. I
And
got
I don't blame him. He was a news guy.
yeah, I know, but still.
Yep. But still.
There's a headspace that some people get. Um, and they don't realize that sports is news. Sports is news.
Can be.
Sure,
Certainly can be.
it's
We're
always
all in the business of doing the same thing. We tell
news.
stories.
what
We
you're
we
watching
tell
something
stories.
happening right now. You're watching it happening right now. So
We're storytellers.
somebody gets hurt on the football field, there's that story. If somebody loses the game, there's that story. If somebody wins the game, there's that story. If this one gets taken out, that one gets taken out. If it rains, I mean, it's news. It's the news
Yep.
about the sports and what's going on with the sports. So
Yep.
so you're perfectly capable of taking.
Telling stories live. That's what we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I thought that was interesting, but I did really love that, and it was sort of an underdog story because you shouldn't be looked at like the underdogs, but you came out so on top and did such a great job. It's just that the story's so tragic, and I
Yeah.
had forgotten that they died.
Yep. It was a tragic end to a long, difficult day. Um, and the Germans have since taken responsibility for having kind of messed up the rescue effort.
And they
And we
paid the
felt badly for our friends in Germany because they had worked really hard to make sure since 1936 that this was to be a upbeat, clean Olympics.
yeah, Leonie
And
Menes, she plays the woman she's got such a
she was
great
fantastic.
role.
Yeah, she's an amalgam of several people who we were in touch with over there down the hall who spoke German, and who knew a lot of our friends down the hall,
Mhm.
so they could get information from them when nobody else could. So
It was such a great role, and
she did a superb job.
and she loved she really wanted her country to come out on top of this. She wanted them to do a great job. She said, "This
Yep.
our job is to do a great job here."
Leonie was fantastic, and
And
she was brilliant to
when
work with.
she came
And
back in from the airport, and she said,
yeah,
"We didn't do it. We blew it.
yeah,
It was our."
yeah, she felt it. She knew it and she felt it.
And you could tell it was
Yeah.
very painful to watch her be in so much pain
Yep.
because
Yep.
she was disappointed in her country again.
Yes.
Probably
Correct.
disappointed in her country again. S
Yep.
I love that part. I thought that was really great, but I couldn't remember. It's hard to imagine how they could have screwed that up so badly, but things happen where people do screw things,
Things happen when,
and you think you've got it
we
covered.
we didn't have the communications in those days that we have now. So they were up against that barrier. And
And you got
when
a call that said they were fine.
well, yeah, Germany announced officially they're all alive. They're
Yeah.
fine.
So you guys are celebrating, and then,
Then we had to decide how to call it, what to say about it, because we weren't convinced that they were fine. And there was a scene in the movie where we discuss how do we say this? We don't want to mislead anybody. And we decided to say we are hearing
right.
from Germany officially, that they're all safe.
This
So
was
that's how we got off the hook, so to speak. And it was true. We were hearing that.
yeah, well, but it was horrible when it
And
changed.
we weren't the only ones that announced it. German television did. All those world broadcasters that were there down the hall with us that day, they all announced the same thing. So it wasn't just us.
Did anybody else have the dilemma that you had though of actually deciding whether you're gonna I mean, I remember the line, the character says, "Are we gonna," and then you say, "Are we gonna shoot people live on TV?"
Everybody did, I'm sure. Yes,
I mean,
because we're
people
all
dying.
covering the same story. So, if and the reason we decided that we will just go ahead with it was that we didn't think we only had, don't forget, we only had two cameras.
Right.
It was live, but not real live. We had a lot of other film cameras shooting other things. And so the two cameras we had, if you'll remember, the one on the front door
One on top.
outside and the one on top of the tower. So we didn't really think our two cameras would be involved in watching somebody getting shot live. We thought the chances were strong that that would happen elsewhere out of the view of our cameras, and that if we captured it on either film or tape, we'd be able to edit it and replay it later. So we figured it was a safe assumption that we would be able to call it live and that we would probably get away with it.
But not knowing what you're gonna see
That's
in
true.
in a situation like this,
Yep.
You never know what you're going to see in a football game or at and all these different things. But when you're in a terrorist situation, you never know what you're
Yeah.
going to see.
It was, we had a lot of decisions to make that
Yeah,
day.
yeah, it was amazing.
A
I
long day.
can't believe you went through that a long day.
Long day. 22 hours.
Yeah, that was a long day, all right. That's for sure. So,
Don Olmeyer, my roommate, he was one of our directors. He and I went back to the hotel at the Sheraton at the end of that 22-hour day. Sat down we had connecting rooms and sat on our beds, built ourselves a good stiff vodka. I was still drinking then.
yeah, thank God. Thank
And we
God.
both sat down and we cried like babies. It was
Yeah,
the first chance we'd had to feel what we had just been through. And it was awful.
yeah. I don't understand why they felt like they had to kill them, you know.
Right.
Well, this was amazing. I'm very proud of you, and I can't believe you went through all this and I didn't know it.
Well, you are the best. I'm really glad that we had an opportunity to get caught up,
Yeah,
but to talk about this story
it's so
and
important.
within the framework of what you're doing,
Mhm.
which is honorable and risky, and you're doing a good job. And so thanks for the opportunity, and let me know if there's anything else I can do.
Well, what are you doing next in your retirement?
Well, we're thinking about making the sequel to the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're thinking about making a sequel going from Munich to the earthquake in Los Angeles, which was another news story covered
That's
by
a great
sports,
idea. I love that idea.
and use that as a connecting point to get us into the ultimate Rune Arledge story.
That's a great
And
idea.
that's what we're thinking about doing, but we got a long way to go. I
Okay.
mean, the movie was just released a couple months ago, so
I know. But
allow us to take a deep breath.
you got nominated for Oscars, and I don't.
Yeah, we got an Oscar nomination. We were very
It's
pleased about that.
incredible. I mean, it's
Yeah,
incredible. Your first time out. Did you like making a movie?
I never had so much fun.
Yeah,
And I've been involved in a lot of things in my
you
career.
have. You have.
And this may be the project about which I'm the most proud.
It's so fun. It's so
Yep,
fun.
I'm
Yeah,
blessed.
I loved making my movie. I really enjoyed it
Exactly.
a lot. Yeah, but I had to keep the budget real small, so it was a.
So did we.
And yeah, did you?
So did we. Yeah, we did not have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, it
That-
didn't look like it. It looked great.
Thanks.
Well, look for your next fantastic, big, wonderful thing.
Thank you, Tana. Good luck to you on this venture, and we'll keep in touch.
Okay, God bless you, honey. Bye bye. Thank you.
Take care.
Congratulations. Okay, bye bye.
Thanks.